Hello everybody, this is Conquering History Games and welcome back to another Stellaris Custom Civilization. This is going to be, I think, my personal favorite of the non-original content science fiction civilizations that I'm going to be building here. Some of you who have been long-time viewers of the channel may have remembered me making this civilization before. Ignore this, this is nothing. Alright, create a new empire. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to be doing the first of what is going to be a trilogy of another set of Robert Heinlein's works. It's going to be a human civilization, and we are going to call this species the Howard families. Collectively, so they are a humanoid-looking species. Well, they are humans. Let's not make no mistake here. They are humans. That's why I picked the human look. However, they are a special type of human. Now, I'm not going to go over all the lore of them, but this is based mostly on the books Methuselah's Children and Time Enough for Love, but especially Methuselah's Children by Robert Heinlein. And the concept behind these Howard families is that there was a guy named, his last name was Howard, who lived in the 1800s, and he found himself dying of old age at the age of like 40. And he had his money put into a foundation whose goal it was to find a way to extend the natural lifespan of humans. So what this foundation did, and I want to be clear that the Howard families, none of them are actually descended from Howard. They just are collectively called the Howard families because they're a result of this foundation's work. And the concept that they originally did with the foundation was that they would try to find people who had 4 living grandparents that were over 80 years of age. And then they would pair them up with other people who had 4 living grandparents that were over 80 years of age. And they'd said, we are going to give you a stipend for every child that you have. And then those children would only be allowed to, well, not allowed, they weren't locked down, they weren't slaves, but the Howard families would keep in contact with these, the Howard Foundation would keep in contact with the families, and then whenever children got to be old enough that they could marry legally, they would approach them, like, you know, these like 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds, whatever, and say, hey, we're part of the Howard Foundation, your parents were part of the Howard Foundation, here's a list of people who are your age, who are also part of our experiment, and we will pay you a stipend in order to have children with somebody from this list. Now, these weren't forced marriages, I want to be totally clear about that, but basically over time, the positive genetic traits were reinforced within the Howard family, so they began to live longer and longer lives. Now, eventually, it gets to this point where everybody has access to the stuff. Anyway, you know what? Let's just fill in a couple of other things here. Okay, Howards, and then adjective families. So, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Howards with the next 2 Stellaris Custom Civilization videos, but I'm only going to talk about what you need to know for the purposes of me creating their traits. The ship prefix is going to be VG. Whoops. Ship prefix VG, and I've actually made a custom name list that I'm working on. I'm probably like going to constantly be working on this over the course of years, but what I've done is I've named them after characters who are from Methuselah's Children and Time Enough for Love and stuff, and it's different combinations of the names, because you got to remember that they're all, I don't want to say everybody in the families is related, but like there's a lot of families that, you know, get kind of close because there's a lot of intermarriages, so like you have sets of brothers marrying sets of sisters and things like that, and occasionally there's swinging going on, but so you have names like Ted Bronson, Lazarus Lazuli, Woodrow Wilson. These are people who know the books, know these names, Justin Long and stuff like that. All right, traits. So this is the really important stuff. Now, the first thing, the definitive characteristic of these people is that they are venerable. The main character of the Howard families, Lazarus Long, when you first meet him in Methuselah's Children, he's about 250 years old. There's a lot of other members of the family who are easily living into their hundreds with no problem at all. So I think that deserves them getting the venerable trait. Of course, the venerable trait is a very expensive one. We're going to have to take some negative stuff. But the other thing that's really important for them is that they are nomadic, which I think this actually used to be 2 points, so I'm glad it's just down to 1. But this species has a nomadic past, and its members often think nothing of relocating to another world. Pop growth from immigration is plus 15%. Resettlement cost is minus 25%. A central part of the Howard families is that they were basically the first humans to successfully explore space. That's what a lot of Methuselah's Children is about them going to other worlds to try to live, with some pretty bad consequences, as we'll see in the next couple of civs. Now we need some negative stuff to work on that. First thing is that they're deviants. These people are rebellious in nature and constantly trying to challenge the status quo. That's very, very true of a lot of the Howards, certainly of Lazarus Long. Beyond being deviants, they are also solitary, which might sound a little weird, but members of this species tend to be solitary and territorial, often becoming agitated in crowded conditions. The reason for this is like they don't like to live in crowded areas even later on. Now the Howard families, there came a point they used to live in secrecy because they were afraid of how they'd be treated when people found out why they were living this unnaturally long life, and in fact it becomes public knowledge that these people exist, this kind of a subspecies of human, although it's not a subspecies, it's just a really genetically bred version of them. They are how do I say this? So a lot of them, they distrust any society that has a government. They're very libertarian. One of the members of the Lazarus family, the Howard families, once said something like, "When a society has reached a point where there's ID cards, I leave." Now, finally, even though they live to be a very to a very old age, they are also slow breeders. Now, this might seem contradictory for some of you, whether you know this or not, but even though the Howard families tend to have lots of children, because the foundation is helping, it's funding the ability for them to raise the kids, so they tend to be very financially stable, and they feel comfortable having several children, and in fact are rewarded by it. But because of the genetic, I don't want to say it's inbreeding, but because you are having a kind of small group of people, even after the experiment's been going on for, I want to say, like 350 years, there's still only about 100,000 members of the Howard families, and they tend to only intermarry with each other. And so this causes some genetic dead ends where the wrong genes are getting reinforced, and so you have the kids that are fucked up, they die early, or they're incapable of reproducing, and so that creates dead ends. So because to represent those dead ends, we're going to have these slow breeders, and it's also because there are going to be other humans in this galaxy war. It's to represent that as overall, even though they are still humans, they are breeding at a slower rate than the rest of the humans, because I want that to be a key feature of them. Okay, homeworld name. Segundus. This was a major planet that the Howard families helped settle. Star name is going to be Lazarus. Lazarus is, Lazarus. There's going to be Lazarus in the nameless, but I wanted to make sure at least one was in there, in the star, so that he could be, paid tribute to. Continental world, pretty straightforward. Starting solar system doesn't really matter, so we'll keep that random. We're going to go with a mammalian city. Now, ethics. This is where I have to talk a little bit about the stuff that goes on in Methuselah's Children, which incidentally I think you can now find for free on the internet. I think the Heinlein Society has it. It's kind of an old book, so I don't think it's copyrighted anymore. But the first thing is that these are xenophobes. The stakes could not be higher as you reach into the vast uncharted expanses of the galaxy, for we're gambling with the very survival of our species. Never trust the alien. The false smile hides an unknowable mind. So one of the big events in Methuselah's Children is that the Howard families all hijack a interstellar spaceship, and they flee the galaxy. They go and they find other places to inhabit. I'll talk about it in more detail in other videos, but basically they encounter two different alien species and have very, very, very bad experiences with them. So they do not trust aliens. They're hateful of the aliens. They're not full-blown fanatic xenophobes, but they are going to have the ability to purge and enslave them, and they will not give aliens full citizenship. Aliens will not be allowed to have full military service, and they will not accept refugees. The good news is that this will lower their starbase influence cost and increase their growth speed. So they're oligarchic. They're going to every 20 years elect a new ruler. It's kind of a council that runs the Howard family. Of course, they do have their basis in the foundation there. Over here, when we come to the civics, they are going to be Where is it? Oh, sorry, I forgot. They're also fanatic materialist, very technologically driven, less robot upkeep, faster research speed, academic privilege is allowed as a living standard. They cannot outlaw AI, and they cannot outlaw robotic workers. Even though they hate aliens, the Howards tend to be very fond of some of their robots, some of their artificial intelligences that they create. So they will be a technocracy, because it's not really a government, it's a family. To maximize efficiency, the society is governed according to the principles of science and rationality. The personal whims of an ignorant and dangerously unqualified political elite must not be allowed to interfere. The Capitol buildings replace some administrator job with the science director research, and they will also produce one unity. Finally, they are going to be a meritocracy. Even though age is really important in the Howard families, like the rule of seniority, an individual's social station or personal connections should have no basis on their profession. The sole basis for advancement in the society is demonstrated ability and talent. This is going to increase their level pool size, leader pool size, and leader level cap, which is good because they're going to be so old. Having said that, I don't anticipate these guys are going to do too well in the Galactic War, but here's hoping. I'm probably going to be rooting for them. Now, what we're going to call this is the Great Diaspora. Oops. The Great Diaspora, because this was when the Howard family were very much the leaders of when the Earth began to spread out from Earth itself. When humans started to explore the galaxy, the Howards were the tip of the spear. Adjective will be the Howards. Or the Howard, like the Howard Empire. Okay, for the flag, we're going to go with something that I thought just sort of looked like the logo for Ace Publishing, which is what my copy of Time Enough for Love, which is my favorite Heinlein book, looks like, and it stars the Howard families. Okay, ship appearances. I don't remember. I think we were doing, yeah, we were doing Mammalian here. Starting ruler is going to be a man, Justin Foote. Chief Archivist. He's the one who's running the families at the start of Time Enough for Love. Let's change the room here. And as well as running the planet of Secundus, so that seemed to be a pretty obvious choice. We're going with room 6 here. The hairstyle, you know, usually I like to mess around with the hairstyle a little more, but I actually think the starter one, it actually kind of looks like Lazarus Long's from the cover of, although actually it's a little more red, so maybe something like, we gotta find it. Yeah, a little more reddish, but it looks very much like the cover copy I have of Time Enough for Love of Lazarus Long's hair, and Justin Foote is a descendant of his. Although that's not saying much, a lot of people are descended from him. Anyway, that is the Great Diaspora, the Howard families. We're going to be talking more a little about them in the next 2 Stellaris Custom Civs vids, so look forward to that. I know that I am, and I will see you all in that next one. Subscribe if you haven't already, and click the bell so you're always notified when the next episode is up. See ya. Bye.